Okay, hi everybody. Hope you're having a beautiful day. I just want to take a minute and we have a couple of announcements. One of our therapists, Gary Doc, and two of his compadres are putting together some programs at our place. And one of the ones they're going to introduce tomorrow is our new program on anger management. They're doing a podcast. Okay, it's going to be at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, and it's going to be on Zoom, and we'll be recording it also. And also, if you want information about that, just go to the website. The Zoom numbers are there. Okay. So we're very excited about our educational programs. Gary's involved in it. We're also going to be doing some other programs too. So, kind of stick with that and check it out. All that information is on the website. And by the way, we're revamping our website too, making it a lot nicer, a lot clearer. We also want to mention that due to the inauguration next week, we are going to not have a 12 o'clock lecture, but we will have a 7 o'clock lecture at night. I think that went out in the email. Okay, it'll be a reminder tomorrow too. There'll be no 12 o'clock lecture next week, but there will be a 7 o'clock lecture at night. Okay, just to let you know about that. I think that's all the announcements I have for now. Everything else is on the website. I want to begin by doing a reading, and I picked the one from the language of letting go for today. It kind of fits nicely into what we're doing today. January 13th, good feelings. When we talk about feelings in recovery, we often focus on the troublesome trio: pain, fear, and anger. But there are other feelings available in the emotional realm: happiness, joy, peace, contentment, love, closeness, excitement. It's okay to let ourselves feel pleasurable feelings too. We don't have to worry when we experience good feelings. We don't have to scare ourselves out of them. We don't have to sabotage our happiness. We do that sometimes to get to the more familiar, less joyous terrain. It's okay to feel good. We don't have to analyze, judge, or justify. We don't have to bring ourselves down and let others bring us down by injecting negativity. We are allowed to let ourselves feel good. Today, I will remind myself that it is all right to feel as good as I can. I can have many moments of feeling good. I can find a balanced place of feeling content, peaceful, and good. And so that'd be a good positive way to kind of get our day started today. Because we're going to be continuing our series on addictions. And I want to talk today primarily about what I refer to as isolation addictions. And so over the next couple of weeks also, we'll talk about fantasy and caretaking. But I want to mention something which is really important. Addiction of itself is basically a cover, very many times, of us avoiding the responsibility of looking at ourselves and working on ourselves. It's almost like I'd rather stay in a comfortable place and have to go through change. It's also basically what I always refer to addiction as: an illusion of control. It's almost like there's illusion that we think we're in control, but we're not in control. And yet, in reality, so many of us think we are because so many of us are scared. And that brings us into a lot of fear of change, fear of new things, fear of new directions. So, a lot of times, it's much more comfortable to go back to the old. Of course, change involves risk. Today's addictions, we talk about isolation addictions, I call them the hiding addictions. It's almost like I'm scared to death of actually looking at the real me, going to the core of my center, and being able to go through the process of change and growth. It's much easier just to be comfortable. So, some of the addictions we talk about today are what I refer to as technology addiction, institutional addiction. It's almost like I can find a place to hide, both in institutions, because I want them to make all the decisions for me. And believe me, I'm an expert at that one. I did it for years, waiting for institutions to change instead of me dealing with it, because I was too scared to do the things I needed to do. We also experience things such as drugs and alcohol. And again, very many times, a lot of people are what I refer to as the functional addicts. We use drugs and alcohol as a way to take the edge off so we don't have to actually feel and be in touch with our feelings. And many of us even have a hard time with feelings in general. We also have, under isolation, relationship addictions, where I try to find somebody else to make me happy. I search for happiness in others. And as a result, then I'm not going to find it in others, but I think I can. And also, I refer to those addictions as the hostage taking addictions, where basically I can take somebody else hostage and want them to be what I want them to be, because I'm afraid to make a decision for myself in the course of my journey in life, because I'm scared of change. I'm scared of new things and new directions. And so it's much easier to stay with the old. And as you get older, it even gets harder because the element of concept of change is scary. So relationships are supposed to be the core of life. Yet so many of us use them as a way to get our way in life. The other addictions that come under this are workaholism. I can do the same job every day until 10 years after I'm dead. I don't even know I died. It's totally amazing. You come right down to it. And so as a result, I'm very comfortable. I'm also scared of change. In our society, especially when the technology changed, people went through a lot of changes. Many of us in the older generation, talking about me, would have a hard time getting a job today. And I have a hard time because I don't have some of the technology skills that you would need in the workforce today. And yet it has another side to it because we don't have to think anymore. All we got to do is scan everything. Everything else is done for us. And to me, this is a concept of avoiding responsibility, avoiding growth, avoiding change. And so literally, I like to stay in my little cocoon because at least it's safe. I feel comfortable there. And so many of these addictions we're talking about, and the other one under this too is anorexia, where basically I want somebody else always to take care of me. So if I literally shut my body down, I'll always be taken care of. It's the old concept. Many of us that are closer to my generation remember a movie. It was called Marty. And Marty was that classic movie where basically, you're walking along and they say to Marty, "What do you want to do?" He says, "Whatever you want to do." "Where do you want to go?" "Wherever you want to go." "What do you want to eat?" "Whatever you want to eat." See, there's a philosophy behind this. As long as I let everybody else make the decisions, then if it doesn't work, I got somebody to blame. Isn't that wonderful? See, I can blame the institution. I can blame technology. Blame is such a powerful process of avoiding the things we have to look at and deal with. And the biggest thing when it comes to isolation addictions is fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear of moving forward. And so many times in the course of our journey, it's also a fear of faith. It's a fear of actually realizing the fact that I can't control something. So let me control the present so I can avoid dealing with the future. And again, I can relate to a lot of this because every one of these addictions, in one way or another, I can relate to. I'm sure many of us can too. I look at my own journey, I look at my own life, I can speak from my own experience. The institution for me was a very safe place for a long period of time. Actually, it was a safe place for almost 45 years of my life. Because when I was in the institution, especially the church, guess what? Everything was taken care of for me. I never really had to grow up because literally they took care of all my business, had no sense of responsibility. I joked today, I said I was on what I call organized welfare. And basically, everybody else was taking care of everything for me. That was great. I even had a housekeeper who washed my clothes, made my bed, basically cooked all my meals for me. Basically, it was almost like having, mommy at home again. And so it's scary because what happens when you get into that kind of a mentality, you become comfortable in it. And therefore, when you have to look at the reality of change, and a lot of these things we're talking about today, fear of the unknown, fear of change, fear is a powerful, powerful feeling. It can overwhelm you. We're seeing a lot of this going on in our society today, because we listen to too many things coming from all different directions. And so fear is a normal part of life. But fear has two sides to it. There's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. There's a natural fear, that we have in life when things are happening. At the same time, when it overwhelms us, fear can move us into the different areas of addiction. As a result, then basically we have to learn where all this comes from. And I said this last week when I gave the introduction to this on codependency. I am such a firm believer that the foundations of our addiction and our addictive personality and migrating towards addictions is because so many of us never dealt with the foundations of where this comes from. And I've learned in my own life, and it took a lot of time to do it and a lot of work, that change basically, if you face your fears and work through your fears, but in order to do that, you have to let go of the addictive process. Just to give you an example, one of the hardest things in the world to do to break the addiction of technology, the addiction of things in this direction, is to do more research for yourself instead of just wait. I don't have to think anymore, make the decisions anymore. I got that lady, Mrs. Google, make all those decisions for me, or Mr. Google, whatever you want to call it. But the concept is, I never even have to think about where I'm going because they'll tell me where to go. Maybe in another direction. They may even tell me that too. But the concept is they keep telling me where to go all the time. And as a result, then I never have to think anymore. And I get scared because I know these two addictions, we don't talk about them a lot. But basically, so many people in life, myself included, were scared to make major life changes and move into new directions because of fear. I know in my own life, I know I spent 44 years of my life in fear. I never totally understood why, because to me, it was just normal. Because I really felt like it was my job to make everybody else happy. It was my job to perform for everybody else. And as a result, believe it or not, I did a good job externally, but destroyed myself internally. And I can relate to many of these addictions. I can relate to relationships. I can relate to work. I can relate to even forms of anorexia too, in a sense of basically beating my body up. I always kind of look towards everybody else to make decisions for me because I spent a good portion of my life blaming. See, I blame the church. I blame my mother. I blame this thing. I blame my family. I blame my background. And blame is a very dangerous thing because once you blame everybody else, it means that you don't want to look at your own self and deal with your own stuff on the inside. I have a lot of gratitude, and I posted this morning for our recovery program, for our 12-step program, and for the gift of the 12 steps. Because I realize we've been given a gift, but I've also learned something else. Fear, basically, is an addiction of isolation. It's an addiction that you can really just hide and do everything yourself. Because many of us are scared of saying those two magic words, the most powerful words in recovery: help me. It's very difficult to actually ask somebody else to help us. And yet I've learned through the concept of our program, it's interesting because I kind of cheated a little bit. Tomorrow's meditation in the Native American Indians meditation book is called Praying in the Circle. And the circle is what life is about. And so I realized over and over again the value of that because I told you this so many times. One of my favorite movies is The Lion King. I love The Lion King because it talks about the circle of life. But I also love The Lion King because many of us have a tendency to go off and beat ourselves up like Simba did, blaming himself for something that he didn't do. And yet the Rafiki, who I call the higher power, had to come along and smack him over the head a few times and get his backside back in the circle. And I've learned in the course of recovery why I love it so much is that many times I can slide back into different addictions to avoid having to look at me. And the greatest gift I've learned in the course of my journey is that I can take time to look at me. I can get time to love me, to find out who I am, to get in touch with me. But to do that, you got to come out of hiding. You can't stay in the cocoon. We're scared. It's almost like we're afraid to become the butterfly. It's much easier to be the caterpillar. Then we can just kind of crawl around and get through life and survive. I don't know about you. I don't want to spend my life surviving because surviving means you're not alive. I want to be able to celebrate and enjoy life. And even what's going on today, I'm learning the gift of adjustment. And so these addictions we're talking about today are addictions that I use very many times to avoid, to run away, to look at something else, and to live an external life, but not an internal life. And isolation is a good way to hide from life. And I can say this honestly today. I'm grateful I can. You know, a good portion of my life was spent in hiding. A good portion of my life was spent running. A good portion of my life was spent being scared to death, even though to the outside world, I appeared not to be scared. Isn't that amazing what we can do, especially adult children of alcoholics and codependents? God, we're unbelievable. I see so many faces here can really connect what I'm talking about because we can run companies, we can run businesses, we can function, we can get things done. All these addictions I'm talking about today, we can function with them. But are we really functioning? Yeah, externally. But we're really decaying internally. I don't know about you, but I don't want to decay while I'm still alive. There's so much beauty in every human being and every person, but you got to be able to go back, look at your history, face it. Don't be afraid of it, even though you will be. Because I was scared to death to do this work, believe it or not. I'm grateful today, a lot of gratitude. And I know I've got a lot more to do. But I'm realizing over and over again that I spent a lot of time in hiding because I was scared of change. And change is scary. I can still remember when I was in the priesthood and I began to deal with, I couldn't understand why I was doing some of the crazy things I was doing. You know, like constantly battling with the church, constantly doing everything. If they told me to do go right, I would go left. They told me to do say blue, I'd say red. I basically fought every damn thing that could do because I wanted them. I wanted somebody to blame because I was unhappy. But see, my concept was very simple. And this fits into technology addiction, relationship addiction. It fits into drugs and alcohol. It fits into everything. Because literally, I was walking around waiting for someone else to make a change, an institution to make a change, and basically wanted them to make me happy. And again, I can relate to this in so many ways because you can put it into all these addictive personalities I talked about today. And so the concept is drugs and alcohol. We have many, many what I call functional addicts. I call them white knuckle addicts who literally can get through the day, can function, but they got to get to that happy hour or that happy weekend or the other unmanageable stuff in their life. At the same time, it's how I look, it's appearance, it's external. And I don't want to be external anymore. I'm tired. I want to be more internal. And today I realize that life is a lot simpler when you really just take some time to look at yourself and work on yourself. I'm going to warn you about something. So many times in the course of our journey, we play a game called rebounding. Got to talk about rebounding just for a couple of minutes. Now, many of us do this. I'll put the drugs and alcohol down, but I will pick up relationships, or I'll pick up other addictions, or I'll pick up work. You know, I joke about this in my own recovery because when I put out drugs and alcohol down, I basically went into recovery, quotation marks. I basically was what they called back then a two-stepper. And many of you in recovery know what a two-stepper is. I did the first step and I did the 12th step. Didn't need the 10 in between. We kind of skip over them. And what I realized was I basically just put one thing down, picked up work, performance, and other things. Then I picked up an eating disorder on top of it. And so basically my life was unmanageable. My life was crazy. But to the external world, it appeared to be all together. You know, it's interesting sometimes when I work with people, especially a lot of times I work with mothers who basically want to save somebody or fix somebody, and they're hurting themselves in the process. The hardest thing in the world is to let go. Hardest thing in the world is to go through change. Hardest thing in the world is to move forward. I've learned something today. I don't want to ever be done. Please. So many of us get a thing. When will I get to that point where everything will be wonderful, fantastic, and I'll be on top of the world? And I always tell them, somewhere for codependence, somewhere around 35 years after you're dead. See, we take a lot longer as codependents. It's not a problem. For addicts, it's about 12 years after you're dead. But the concept is, what's not going to happen? I hope and pray every day that we never stop growing. I always love telling the story. You've heard me tell it before, but I love telling it because it fits right into what we're talking about here. When I was in the seminary, and that was another safe place and a good hiding place, we had a professor there named Father Pete. And Father Pete, when he taught me, was in his early 90s. But I loved him. Here's a man, 93, 94 years old, who basically lived off campus. He had a nice little house, had a roof put on the house, and had a fight with the roofer for a 20-year guarantee. I call that optimism. And yet I looked at him, I was young then. I was what? I don't know, 23, 22 years old. And I really could not understand how this old man was going to teach me stuff. That man had something called wisdom. He had experience. And now I understand what the Indians talk about when they say to sit at the feet of your elders, to learn from those who have gone before you, to be open to new things and new directions, to be open to change. As much as you can say this, and I've said it, and people have said it, I don't want to go back to where things were. We see this right now in the disease we're dealing with, in the unrest that's going on right now. And many of us say things like, when will things get back to normal the way they were before? My answer is never. We're moving into a new normal, a new concept, a new growth process, because remember something which is the hardest part with these addictions. All growth takes place through struggle. Everything in life takes place through struggle. And I find it interesting that basically we're going through something right now that was normal in Europe for a long period of time. And as a result, so many times we're scared to do the work. We're scared of the struggle. We're scared of new things and new dimensions. Always remember that sometimes something has to come to an end so something new can be born. We learn this in therapy all the time. You can't open a new door till you close the old door. But addicts, we don't totally believe that. See, we love rebounding. Put one down, pick up another one, and we might as well try them all before we get done. What the hell? See what happens. And maybe I'll find the perfect addiction. Maybe that'll take care of everything for me. But again, I joke about this and I laugh about it. It's not funny. I know that. Because at the same time, I got to learn to laugh a little bit. Because I'm no different than you. All of us are the same thing, and we all do this. Many of us have done rebounding, going from one to another. And I still got to be careful today because I can slide right back in it very easily. I can make my work the center of my life. I can make anything the center of my life, running away from the fact of my life. I'm the architect of my life, but as an architect of my life, I need a construction crew. That's you guys. I need a family. I need to be interconnected with others. And that meditation for tomorrow in Native American Indian, I'll put it on Facebook tomorrow. But that beautiful meditation talks about the circle of life and that we're all part of the circle. And we have to learn a very simple thing. We have to learn how to share and listen. The Indians said something very beautifully. They said, isn't it amazing how the higher power gave us one mouth and two ears? There's something about that. Because so many times the mouth runneth over and the ears can't hear. But also we learn something else. I learn from the people I meet. That's why I love the philosophy behind our 12-step programs, because we come together. Our first step tells us we come together. We need each other. So everybody's experience, everybody's strength, whatever people have gone through on their journey, as long as we have the openness and the willingness to be able to share it, we have the openness and the willingness to be able to interconnect with one another. We learn and we grow from each other. Addiction is something that basically holds us back. Addiction is fear. Addiction is the illusion of control. And I realize after a while, we're not in control. There is something out there much more powerful than us. There's a guide, a spiritual guide that's guiding us. And that guide comes to us through many people, many times, in many places. And some of the greatest experiences I've gone through in life have been from the people I've met in the recovery world. Simple people who taught me so much. I think of Norm, who took me to the mustard seed meeting and told me always to meditate on a mustard seed, because from something small, something beautiful comes. Even though they say that the tree that comes from it is kind of ugly, yet ugly is beautiful. I think of Charlie Brown and his famous Christmas tree with the one ornament hanging off of it. From simple little things comes beauty, comes so many things in life, but it comes down to, how do I look at life? What is my vision of life? Do I look at it with a positive attitude? Something I say every day, and I pray every day. I pray that God will allow me to have an attitude of gratitude, to be grateful for every little thing that comes my way, even though it's hard sometimes. There are people in my life I need to have a sense of gratitude, because they are my teachers, even though they might be a pain sometimes, but they're still teachers. An attitude of humility, to be open to learn, to realize the fact you don't have all the answers to everything. To have an attitude of acceptance, to accept what I can do and what I can't do, to stay within my own realm. I had a conversation yesterday with Loretta and also with Ellen, and, and I had to do this because I got to tell you a story. I like stories. I can't help it. But we are making some changes at Starting Point, and we have old furniture and old stuff, and we're giving it to Habitat for Humanity. They were coming to pick it up yesterday. And so Joe, our maintenance man, this sucker can work hard. I work with him. And the old me, we have put some desks out and lift up different things and put things. The old me was able to do all this stuff. The new me, the me of today, I had to come to a realization. I'm 80 years old. I can't do the things I used to do. I can't lift things like I used to be able to lift them. And there's only like a bell went off in my head and said, "Hey, sucker, you better come to an acceptance of this, or you're going to get hurt." That's scary. And yet it's beautiful at the same time. Because, the old me, I can still remember, I told my wife last night when I was refereeing basketball, when I was still in my 60s, I said to her, "I'm going to keep refereeing until I'm 95 years old." Hey, can you see me running up and down that court today with 15 and 16-year-olds? I'd be totally out of my mind. And yet, when I was 60 years old, I'd say, what the hell? I'll do this, I'll be 105 now. Yeah, I'll be running around in a wheelchair, around the gym. It's totally amazing. But the concept is, it almost comes to this realization that we have to come to an acceptance. And I love that word, even though sometimes I don't like it. But I love that word. The acceptance of the reality of where I am on my journey in life. And that takes me into the world we live in today, too. The last time I checked, please don't tell anybody if you think I'm wrong, but we live in a dysfunctional and sometimes a very insane world. Isn't it wonderful? Because it's supposed to be. The secret is, can I use it as a form of growth? Can I learn from it? Or I can be crazy in it. It's called choices. We always have choices. And I'm learning over and over again that acceptance is the key to that. But the last Attitude is an attitude of love, an attitude of healing, an attitude of knowing that even though I may disagree with someone and have a problem with them, I can still pray for them. I can wish them well. I can let go. I can be open to new things and new directions. Prayer is one of God's greatest gifts that's been given to us. But prayer's got to come from here, not from here. See, words are easy to say. What comes from here is what's important. And I say this over and over again. It will always be one of the great lessons I learned in my life. Now, you're looking at a person here who studied theology, who studied philosophy, who went through the seminary, and I can prove it. I got pieces of paper you hang up on the wall. In fact, the one I have here is about, I don't know, it's gigantic. Anyway, it proves that I passed the courses. I learned nothing about life, nothing about prayer. And some of the greatest teachers I've had, believe it or not, were people that came off the street. I've learned so much from working in the prison systems, working around people that were hurting. And one of my famous teachers is a guy from Philadelphia, from South Philly. Of course, everybody in South Philly is a little, what can I tell you? Anyway, I love it there. But anyway, some of my great teachers came from there. And this is one of the guys that is a very beautiful guy, but he's a street guy. I'm not going to give his name. Anytime I don't want to give a name in South Philly, I just say Little Joe. Everybody's Joe. What can I tell you? That passes the inspection there. Mike, I'll call him Mike too, but just Joe. But the concept is Joe would come to our halfway house, and he always came in, especially when it started getting cold. We used to have a saying when the hawk arrived, started getting cold, he would arrive. He'd bring his shopping bag in with him. He set up this little table, and he would do the same thing all the time. I used to love watching him take all of his treasures out of his shopping bag. The one treasure was a crucifix. The crucifix was old. We got in the trash can. I know it. The figurine was bent. The arm was hanging down. He placed it on the bureau. And I say to him, "Hey, Joe, who's that?" He said, "That's the boss." I said, "Tell me about the boss." "He's a nice guy," he said. "Some days I get really pissed off at him." I'm not going to use the same language Joe used. I get pissed off at him. I tell him off. Some days I get really angry at him. Other days he's pretty neat. I like him. But every day I make sure I tell him how I feel. Now, believe it or not, Joe was just teaching me the highest form of prayer. To speak from your gut, to talk to your higher power from what's going on inside of you, no matter what it is. That to me is what recovery really is all about. That's why I did that reading today about feelings, because feelings are part of our journey. Change is part of our journey. Being open is part of our journey. Moving in new directions is part of our journey. Is it scary? Yeah. It's scary. And yet at the same time, I realize the fact that God works his way through us. People don't believe me when I tell them this, but my wife can attest to it. Loretta can attest to it if you want to ask them. Before every lecture I do, retreat that I do, things that I get involved in, I'm always a nervous person. My wife tells you about 20 minutes before the lecture, I'm pacing around the house. And she says to me, "Oh, must be almost time for a lecture again." So she knows me real well. But I realize over and over again, it's part of it. And I realize today, if you're going to allow the higher power to speak through you, just be who you are. Addiction may sneak into our life. It's part of our journey. But I know over and over again that many times we go towards addiction to try to run away. And we're going to do it. Sometimes you want to run away. Other times you have to walk in there and be connected to it. And always realize there's something very special that connects to us. Mike has his little friend he's hugging there, which is great. Proud of that. But the concept is we have all kinds of beautiful little things. It might be a pet that you have. It might be a little thing in life. But don't go through life all by yourself, okay? It's too lonely. Be open to new things and new journeys. And that's the key to all the things we do in the course of our journey in life. Because let's face it, every one of us is one of God's children. Every one of us is connected, and every one of us is on the same journey. And so we talk about isolation addictions. They're the addictions we run to avoid having to deal with the reality of life. Life is a great teacher, a powerful teacher, if we're open to the lessons. Is it hard to be open to them? Yes, because sometimes you got to really work through them and struggle through them. And so your body talks to you, your mind talks to you, your spirit talks to you. Stay connected in all three. It's really important. I want to continue this series next week, and I want to talk a lot about fantasy addictions, which are scary addictions. They're based on shame. We'll talk more about that. But I do want to do isolation. I want to take a few minutes now and offer a prayer of being able to come out of hiding, a prayer to be open to the fact that we need each other and we need the gift of sharing with one another. You know, we've learned this over, Thomas Merton taught us so beautifully. No one is an island. No one stands alone. That is the illusion of control. We need one another. We share with each other, and each one of us is valuable. And we can learn lessons, even from things in life that are totally dysfunctional. There's a lesson to learn from it. There's always something to grow from. So let us pray. God, we come before you today as a family. Come before you in prayer. Help us and guide us on our journey. Teach us not to be afraid, but to know that you walk alongside of us. Teach us, please, to ask for your help and your guidance. Help us to reach out to one another, to realize that we need each other in our life. Help us to be open to learn from each other, to grow from one another. Teach us the gift of gratitude for the simple, beautiful things of life. Teach us to be open with a sense of humility to new things and new directions. Teach us not to be afraid, to just be who we are, to have a sense of acceptance of who we are as a person. And teach us above all to try to walk the journey with an energy of love inside of us, the power of healing. And realize the fact that even though this might be hard sometimes, we know that when we go through struggle in life, you're always with us. We ask for guidance and we ask for direction, but we also ask in gratitude for those who have gone before us. For they were our teachers. They were our guides. We thank you, God, for every one of them. They're part of our journey. Even those who may have left us early, they're still our teachers. They teach us that life is to be lived, to be celebrated, and above all, we have to try to the best of our ability not to live our life in fear. So God, please guide us, be with us, teach us to reach out to you, and teach us to always walk the journey of life along with you. We pray today as a family, and we pray this in your name. Amen. And now for just unmute yourself, we'll do the we version of the Serenity Prayer.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. God's will, not mine, be done.